Good morning, students. Today I shall continue with the same question that I have discussed in my previous presentation. That is question number 1 in your book in page number 201. The chapter number is 10 and the chapter name is Query and Functions in MySQL. Now refer to question number 1 of page 201. This was the table identified by the name player, and based on this table I shall start with the questions K and L in your book. Now before I start with this question, I have to set the database which contains this table called player as our current database. Now for that, let me first start the MySQL Workbench. Now this is the startup screen of MySQL Workbench. Let me maximize it. Now I shall bring my mouse cursor over here, that is local instance MySQL 56. On clicking that, I shall see a small dialog window like this where the username is root. Now I shall supply the password for the user root, which I have given as SQL123. Now after typing SQL123 in the password field, I shall click this OK button, which will now give me access to the second window. Now this window consists of a rectangular shaped area. Okay, this is the rectangular shaped area. Okay, and it's colored white. So this area is known as the workspace, where we are going to type and execute the SQL commands. Now in order to work with this table called player, I have to set the database which contains this table as our current database, and for that I have to make use of the use command. So let me type use here, and then I shall specify the name of the database which contains the table called player. Now the database which contains our table player is second database, so I shall write the name of the database as second database here, and then put a semicolon. And once I type the semicolon and end the statement, I shall click on this flashlight button, which will set this database as our current database. Now this is indicated here below in the output window, where the tick mark indicates that this database specified by the name second database has been set as our current database. Now I can easily work with our table called player. So let's start with the first question, K. It says that write a query to count the number of players game wise. Now if we are to count the number of players game wise, that means we have to make use of the count star function. Okay, and if it's game wise, I have to use the group by clause. Okay, and I shall be grouping on the basis of this column, that is game. So I am going to find out here how many students plays the game cricket, how many students plays the game basketball, then kho-kho, then hockey, and so on. So the query for that question shall be select game comma count of that particular game from the table called player, and then I shall group by the column called game. Now on doing this, in the output window I shall see two columns, that is game and count of that particular game. So this is the output. Now see, if the game is cricket, okay, then count of that game shall return 2, because if you see the records, there are only 2 records, okay, where the student plays the game cricket. This is the first one where the student name is Astik, and this is the second one where the student name is Mohan. That's why for the game called cricket, count of game returns 2. Now let's check for the second game, that is basketball. Now if the game is basketball, we again have 2 records. First is this one, okay, where the student name is Hansika, and second is this one where the student name is Subham. So in total, again for the game called basketball, we have 2 records. So count of that game, which is basketball, returns 2. So likewise, let's check for the game called hockey. Now if you look at this game called hockey, there is only one student, okay, by the name Mahua Mondal, who plays it. So from this query game comma count of game, okay, for the game called hockey, count of game will return 1. As shown here, there is only one student identified as Mahua Mondal who plays this game called hockey. Now let me type this SQL statement in the MySQL Workbench. So it's select game comma count of game from player group by game. So let me type it. So select game comma count of game, then I shall specify the name of the table after the from clause, which is player, and since I am grouping by the column called game, so after the group by clause I shall write the name of the column, which is game. And once I type this statement, I shall click this flashlight button, which will show me the output, that is for the game basketball, count of game returns 2, okay, which was exactly shown here. For basketball we have count of game as 2. Again see, for the game called cricket, count of game is 2. For the game called hockey, count of game is 1. And for the game called Kho, count of game is also 1. This is because for the games basketball and cricket, there are 2 participants, okay, and that we can find it out from here, from this table. You can clearly see for cricket I have 2 participants, for basketball I have 2 participants. But if you see here, for the game called Kho and hockey, I have only 1 participant, and that's why count of game returns 1. And that also you can easily find it out here. For the game called hockey, I just have 1 participant, who is Mahua Mondal, and for the game called Kho, I also have 1 participant whose name is Anumita Dasgupta. So just look at this query, which is select game comma count of game from the table player group by the column game, and after executing this query I get this output. So have a look at this output as well. Okay, now let's come to the next question, that is L. This question says, write a query to list the records of players who play either cricket or basketball. Now see, this question is asking us to list the records of players, okay. That means they haven't directly specified the column names of whose records we are going to display. Since the column names are not specifically mentioned, that whether it is PID, FName, LName, game, age or whatever, if they haven't specified any of these column names, we have to assume that we should take into account all these column names. So in order to display the records of all these columns, I have to make use of the star operator. So for that, the query shall be select star from player, where star will retrieve the entries of each of these columns starting from PID, FName, LName, game till age, and these are the entries corresponding to these columns. Now see, the question is asking us to list the records of players who play either cricket or basketball. That means I am going to display those records of students for which the game is either cricket or basketball. So in total, how many records can we have? For the game called cricket, I just have 2 records because there are only 2 students playing the game cricket. Those are Astik and Mohan. And again, for the game called basketball, I have 2 students, which are Hansika and Subham. So 2 2 for cricket and 2 for basketball. In total we have 4 records. So those 4 records shall be displayed in the output table. And let me execute this query in MySQL Workbench. At first let me copy this query and then I shall paste it here. So the query says select star from player. That means I am going to retrieve all these records, okay, from the table called player, and then I shall set the condition that the game should be either cricket or basketball. Now since the game is either cricket or basketball, that's why only those records for which the student plays the game as cricket or basketball shall be retrieved. So in total I have got 4 records. These are the first 2 and these are the next 2. So these 4 records shall get displayed in the output table on executing this query. So let me execute this query on clicking this flashlight button. Okay, but before that let me just enclose the values of the column called game, that is cricket and basketball, within proper quotations. So this is for cricket and this is for basketball. Now let me execute this query by clicking this flashlight button. So here it is. This is the output, okay, where all the records pertaining to the columns PID, FNAME, LNAME, game, gender, DOB and age gets displayed for which the game is either cricket or basketball. That means these are the 4 records, okay, for which the game is either cricket or basketball, and that you can see it clearly in the output window. So just have a look at this query and the result that we got in the output window. So that was the query and the output for this question, which was asking us to list the records of players who played a game either cricket or basketball. Now with this I end my presentation here, and in the next class I shall show you another example of SQL statements practically.